Dad chose my sister over me. She's more important, you'll be fine, he said. I stayed silent and moved on. This morning, he called me crying when he realized I never really had a father. Not in the way most people do. Sure, he was physically there, a towering figure in our home, making the rules, deciding what mattered. But when it came to me, I may as well have been invisible. My younger sister, Megan, was the center of his world. I learned early on that I was an afterthought. If Megan wanted something, she got it. If I wanted something, I got a lecture about being independent. If Megan needed help, he was there in an instant. If I struggled, he'd wave me off. She's more important. You'll be fine. He said it so many times that the words lost their sting after a while. I remember once when I was 8, I fell off my bike and scraped my knee so badly it was bleeding down my shin. Megan, who was 5 at the time, tripped on the sidewalk the same day, barely scuffing her elbow. My dad ran to her, scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and told her everything would be okay. I limped inside on my own, rinsed off my wound in the sink, and wrapped a paper towel around it. My mother saw me and asked what happened. When I told her, she just sighed. You're tough. You'll be fine. That was my life in a single sentence. I stopped asking for things. I stopped expecting help. When I turned 16, I got a job at a grocery store while Megan got a car for her birthday. Paid in full, complete with a pink bow on top. I worked nights to afford a beat-up old sedan, while my dad told me it was good for me to learn responsibility. College? I paid for it myself. Meanwhile, Megan's tuition, apartment, and spending money were fully covered. When I asked why, my father gave me that same indifferent shrug. She needs more help than you. You'll be fine. So I moved on. I worked hard, built my own life, and slowly detached myself from them. I graduated, got a good job, and found a small apartment. I never cut them off completely, but I kept my distance. Calls from my dad were rare. When they did come, they were short and perfunctory. How's work? Good. Okay, take care. I was never invited to Megan's birthdays, nor was I included in any family vacations. My absence was treated like an inconvenience rather than a loss. And honestly, that was fine. I had long accepted that I wasn't really part of their family. But then, this morning, my phone rang. It was my dad. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, the same part that still, stupidly, wanted his approval, made me pick up. The second I said hello, I heard something I had never heard before. He was crying. The sound was so foreign, I almost didn't recognize it. My father, this cold, impenetrable man, was sobbing on the other end of the line. Dad? I asked, caught between concern and disbelief. There was a shaky breath, then a muffled sniff. She's gone, he choked out. I frowned. Who's gone? Megan, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She took everything. For a second, I thought he meant she had passed away. My stomach twisted, and I felt an instinctive rush of worry. But then he kept talking. She took the money, he said, his words tumbling over each other in a desperate, breathless rush. Everything I had. The savings, the retirement fund, even the house, it's all gone. I blinked. Wait. What? He sobbed again, the sound raw and unfamiliar. She said she needed help? She always needed help, you know that. I gave her everything, thinking she'd pay me back one day, or at least she'd take care of me when I got older. I was silent, my grip tightening around my phone. But she just left, he whispered. She drained the accounts. She sold the house behind my back. She moved to California with some guy and... His voice broke completely. She won't answer my calls. She won't even talk to me. I let the silence stretch between us, waiting to see if he'd say it. If he'd acknowledge what he had done. If he'd realize, finally, that his golden child had left him with nothing while the son he ignored had built a life without him. But of course he didn't. Instead, he let out a shaky breath and said the words I knew were coming. I need your help. I almost laughed. Of course. Of course, after everything, this was what it came down to. My father, who had spent my entire life dismissing me, pushing me aside, treating me like an afterthought, now that he had nothing, now that Megan had bled him dry, now he needed me. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Help, I repeated slowly. Yes, he said quickly, latching onto the word like a drowning man grabbing a rope. He cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. I don't have anywhere to go. I used my retirement to cover her student loans, her business ideas, her lifestyle. She told me she'd take care of me. She promised. And now he had nothing. I should have felt bad for him. A part of me, the part that still stupidly wanted his approval, almost did. But another part of me, the part that remembered every time he told me I'd be fine while handing Megan the world, stayed quiet. How much did she take? I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. There was a pause. Everything, he admitted. Over $300,000. I whistled low under my breath. She took everything? I never thought she would. He stopped himself, inhaling sharply. I thought I was helping her. There it was. I could hear it in his voice. He was still trying to justify it. Still trying to make sense of why Megan, his perfect daughter, had done this to him. I closed my eyes. And what do you want from me? Silence. Then, hesitantly. I need a place to stay. There it was. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. You want me, the son you abandoned, to take care of you now? There was a long pause. Then, quietly, he said, You're all I have left. The words should have meant something. Maybe years ago, they would have. But now they meant nothing. I let his words hang in the air. You're all I have left. Years ago, that would have cracked something inside me. Maybe I would have rushed to his side, desperate to finally be needed, finally be chosen over Megan. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I was a man who had built his life from the ground up without him. And now he was here, not because he loved me, not because he regretted how he had treated me, but because the daughter he had given everything to had thrown him away like an old receipt. What do you want me to do, Dad? I asked, keeping my voice even. Pay your bills? Give you a place to stay? Cover for her mistakes the way you always did? He sniffed sharply. I'm not asking for much, son. Just a little help. Just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed. He still didn't get it. What makes you think I want to help you? I said. Silence. I could hear his breath catch, like the thought had never even crossed his mind. In his world, family was an unspoken contract, one that meant I owed him, but he never owed me anything. I could imagine him sitting there, probably at the kitchen table of whatever friend or distant relative he'd begged for a temporary couch. The same man who had once told me to stop acting entitled whenever I'd needed the bare minimum from him, now suddenly seeing me as his lifeline. I waited, giving him a chance to say something, maybe an apology, maybe even an acknowledgement of what he had done. But instead, all I got was a pathetic whisper. I don't have anywhere else to go. I closed my eyes. He still wasn't sorry. He was just desperate. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had the power now. I leaned back in my chair, gripping my phone, letting the silence stretch between us. I wanted him to feel it, the same cold, dismissive silence he had given me my entire life. When I was struggling to pay for college? Silence. When I was working 2 jobs just to afford rent? Silence. When I needed help but never even bothered to ask because I already knew the answer? Silence. Now it was his turn to sit in that emptiness. Finally, he spoke again, his voice shaky. I know I wasn't the best father to you. I almost laughed. The best? He wasn't any kind of father to me. But I'm still your dad, he continued. And family. Family helps each other. There it was. That same excuse he had used my entire life, except back then, it was always about me helping them. Never the other way around. I took a slow breath. Family helps each other? I repeated. That's funny. I don't remember you saying that when I was working myself to the bone while you were paying for Megan's tuition. Or when I was struggling to afford food while you were buying her a brand new car. Or when I was barely getting by and you told me. I let the words settle before delivering the final blow. You'll be fine. Silence. I could hear him realizing it, the weight of his own words finally crashing down on him. Son, please, he whispered. I know I made mistakes, but I don't have anyone else. For a moment, I just sat there, listening to his broken, pleading voice. Then I smiled. And in the same cold, detached tone he had used on me my entire life, I said, You'll be fine. And I hung up. The second I ended the call, I just sat there, staring at the phone. I half expected him to call back, to beg, to yell, to demand that I fix his problems the way he had always expected me to. But the phone stayed silent. For the first time in my life, I had shut him out. And it felt good. Not in the way revenge is supposed to feel. There was no rush of excitement, no deep satisfaction. Just a quiet, steady sense of peace. Like I had finally closed a door that had been left open for too long, letting in nothing but cold air and old ghosts. I exhaled, leaning back into my chair. I should have felt guilty. A part of me, that little boy who had spent years craving his approval, should have wanted to call him back. But that part of me was smaller now, distant, buried beneath years of silence and neglect. I thought about Megan. She had played him perfectly. She had spent her entire life knowing she would always be chosen, that she could do no wrong. And she had used that to her advantage until there was nothing left. And now, she was gone. I wondered if she even felt bad. If she had any regrets. But I already knew the answer. Megan had always been able to move on without looking back. Just like our father had done to me. I ran a hand over my face and sighed. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Dad. For a second, I debated picking up. But instead I just let it ring. It went to voicemail. A few seconds later, a notification popped up. I hesitated, then pressed play. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Son. I don't know what to do. He inhaled sharply. I know I messed up. I know I treated you unfairly. And maybe you won't believe me, but I did love you. His voice broke. He took a long, shaky breath. I just thought she needed me more. I felt something tighten in my chest. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But love isn't just something you say, it's something you show. And in all the years I had been his son, he had never once shown me that I mattered. I have nothing left, he continued. Not even you. There was a long pause. Then, so softly I barely caught it. I'm sorry. The message ended. I sat there, the weight of his words pressing against me. For a moment, I almost considered calling him back. But then I thought about the years of silence, the times I had needed him and he hadn't been there, the way he had chosen this outcome over and over again. He was sorry now, but only because there was no one else left to turn to. I deleted the voicemail. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The weight that had been on my shoulders for years was gone. It was strange. I thought cutting him off would feel like some huge, dramatic moment, but it wasn't. It was quiet. Simple. Like shutting a book I had been forced to read my entire life and realizing I never had to open it again. I went about my day like normal. Made breakfast. Went to work. Answered emails. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying him with me. No resentment. No anger. No desperate need for closure. Just nothing. But he didn't give up that easily. By the next morning, I had 6 missed calls. 2 voicemails. A long, rambling text about how he was willing to talk things out. If I was ready to be reasonable. I ignored all of it. Then, in the afternoon, a message popped up from an unknown number. Son, I know you're upset. But you can't just abandon your father. I did everything I could for you. Maybe I wasn't perfect, but I raised you. I gave you life. Doesn't that mean anything? I just need a little help until I get back on my feet. Just a few months. I'll even pay you back. Please. Don't do this. I stared at the message, shaking my head. He still didn't get it. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about whether or not I could help him. This was about the fact that I didn't want to. Because he hadn't raised me. He had tolerated me. And when I finally stopped needing him, he had let me slip away without a second thought. Because Megan was more important. And now that she was gone, he suddenly wanted me back in his life. No. I wasn't going to be his second choice. Not anymore. I blocked the number. That night, as I sat on my couch with a beer in hand, watching a movie I actually had time to enjoy now that I wasn't constantly weighed down by old wounds, I realized something. I had always thought closure meant getting an apology. A real one. Something where he admitted everything, his favoritism, his neglect, his failures. But that wasn't closure. This was letting go. Moving on. Finally choosing myself for once. And I wasn't looking back. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. At first, I expected the calls and messages to keep coming, but after I blocked his number, my phone was silent. No desperate voicemails. No guilt-tripping texts. No demands for money. And honestly, that silence felt better than any apology ever could. I had spent years letting my father's absence define me, constantly trying to prove I was worthy of his love. But now I saw the truth. I had never needed him. Not really. I had survived without him. Thrived without him. And while he had wasted his life chasing after Megan, believing she would always be there for him, I had built something real. A career, friendships, a life where I wasn't constantly begging for scraps of affection. But then, on a random Sunday morning, an unknown number called me. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, scrolling through my phone when the screen lit up. I almost ignored it, until something told me to pick up. I answered cautiously. Hello? There was a pause, then a familiar voice, worn and tired. Son? I knew instantly who it was. I should have hung up. I had promised myself I was done. But against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. He sounded different this time. Weak. Almost empty. Why are you calling me? I asked, my voice flat. A deep sigh. I don't know, he admitted. I guess I just wanted to hear your voice. I frowned. What do you want, Dad? Silence. Then, slowly, I lost the apartment. Couldn't make rent. He let out a bitter chuckle. Guess I don't have anywhere else to go. I closed my eyes, exhaling through my nose. Of course. Of course, this was why he was calling. Not to reconnect. Not to make things right. He just needed something from me. The way he always had. I thought you said you'd be fine, I said, throwing his own words back at him. He inhaled sharply, like the words had physically hit him. I didn't mean it like that. No? I said, my voice cold. Because that's exactly what you always told me. Every time I needed something, every time I struggled, you told me Megan was more important. That I'd be fine. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Deep, shaky breaths. I was wrong, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I see that now. I waited, giving him a chance to say something else. To really own up to what he had done. But he didn't. Instead, he sighed again. Look, I'm not asking for a handout. Just a place to stay for a little while. Just until I get back on my feet. There it was. The real reason for the call. Not an apology. Not remorse. Just another attempt to get something out of me. I let the silence stretch, letting him sweat on the other end of the line. Then, finally, I spoke. Dad, I said, my voice steady. You've always made it clear who was important to you. And it wasn't me. He let out a sharp breath. That's not fair. No, I cut him off. What's not fair is how you treated me my entire life. You made your choice. You put everything into Megan, thinking she'd be there for you when you needed her. Well, guess what? She's gone. And now you're alone. Silence. I could feel his desperation through the phone. I don't have anyone left, he murmured, barely audible. I nodded to myself. Yeah, I said. And now you know how it feels. Then, before he could respond, I hung up. This time, I didn't hesitate. I blocked the number, set my phone down, and went back to my coffee. No regret. No guilt. Just peace. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. I waited for the guilt to come. Waited for that small, nagging voice in the back of my head to tell me I had made a mistake, that I should call him back, that I should care. But it never did. Instead, all I felt was relief. I had spent my entire life believing I had to prove something to him. That if I worked hard enough, became successful enough, waited long enough, he would finally see my worth. But the truth was simple. I had never needed his approval. And now, for the first time, I wasn't chasing it. I had given him the same indifference he had given me for years. The same cold dismissal. The same words he had thrown at me so effortlessly. You'll be fine. I finished my coffee. Then, without a second thought, I moved on. Days turned into weeks. My father never called again. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe he found someone else to lean on. Or maybe, just maybe, he was sitting alone, realizing what it felt like to be forgotten. Either way, it wasn't my problem. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't the child waiting for his father's approval. I wasn't the afterthought hoping to be seen. I was my own person, free from his shadow. And it felt good. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, my phone buzzed with a message from an old friend. Hey man. Been a while. Let's catch up. I smiled to myself. Yes. It was time to start living for me. And this time, I was more than fine.